Hollywood for your first successful movie.
Well, I came out and did one that wasn't too successful, and then came back out after Angel Street and played some good villains. And it was an interesting time. I think that the whole mood of Hollywood was just changing then. And I'm glad that I was here during the 4 or 5 years before it completely changed into a sort of pseudo-realism that I think it's still in. It was a land of make-believe, and it was very exciting. The glamorous women, the mysterious stars, the people that I met at that time and that got to know and work with are still, to me, fabled creatures. Ronald Colman and Joan Crawford and people like that. They're fabulous people. They're bigger than life. I think a lot of actors today are smaller than life.
Did you learn from them as you played with them and went along in the movies, or did you play with them?
Yes. As a matter of fact, one time when I came out and did my first movie and I saw myself on the screen and I realized that I was too big, too broad, too theatrical. And I went to a woman who was a very famous teacher in New York. She taught everybody, called Laura Elliott. And she sent me to see every movie that Ronald Colman had ever done, and Charles Boyer, both of whom became great friends of mine later on. And I did Ronnie's last 2 pictures with him and toured with Charles Boyer.
In the Don Juan in Hell.
Yes, Don Juan.
Hardwick and
Agnes Moorehead.
That must have been a particular satisfaction.
Terribly exciting.
You mentioned playing the role of good villains, as though there was something particularly juicy about a good villainous part for you.
There is, because the villain has so many sides. I do a lecture around the country. I've been a lecturer for about 20 years now, and I do a lecture now on the history of villainy. They're always the best parts, you know. It's that marvelous thing of Gene Kerr's, the snake has all the lines, you know. Adam and Eve just stand there, but the snake's got all the lines. And the villain is usually such a many-faceted character. He's a very interesting person to study. There are all kinds of villains. There's the villain that is a villain in spite of himself. There is the villain who is a born villain. I mean, the kind who sort of were born that way. And then there are villains that are the most interesting ones, I think, who are turned to evil by fate, really, by the wounds, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune.
Is this what led you into playing in horror movies, or is that a totally different kind of thing?
You know, none of us who were in those films, Boris Karloff and Peter Lorre and Basil Rathbone, and all of us that have been in them, really think of them as horror films. I think of a horror film as a film that really frightens me about everyday life. The stories of violence, the stories of gangsterism in the old days.
Clockwork Orange, that kind
That's
of...
right, yes, I think of that. Because most of the stories that I've done have been based on the tales by de Maupassant and Edgar Allan Poe and Hawthorne and things like that. And they're really classic kind of Gothic tales. And I think Boris felt that way too. I mean, certainly Frankenstein was one of the great novels of its time. You know.
What are the satisfactions to the actor in playing in these kinds of movies?
Well, your problem is very different from that of the realist actor, because you have to make the unbelievable believable. And the other actor, the Marlon Brando, has to make the believable believable. So you have an added dimension, an added challenge as an actor.
How do you account for the popularity of these kinds of films in recent years?
Well, I heard a kid today at UCLA, they're doing some kind of a spook thing, and he said it turns you on, you get a high, the adrenaline goes shooting up. Well, it's true, you know, I mean, the reaction of the audience to The Exorcist is absolutely extraordinary. And I've gone to see some of the Poe pictures that I've done, and the kids just love them, you know, and so do the adults. There is a charge. It's the same charge you get out of a nursery story, isn't it, of a fairy tale.
Do you see some of your earlier movies on TV?
As seldom as I possibly can.
Why?
Well, they're kind of depressing, actually, because in the first place, I watched one the other night that I'd never seen. And I thought it'd be kind of fun to see it. And I watched it, and suddenly I realized that everybody in it was dead but me. It was terrifying. It was really terrifying, because there they were, alive and vital and exciting. They were all gone. They were all people much older than myself, fortunately.
Yes.
But it was very depressing.